Today, we're diving into a text that was written with this incredible urgency, right in the shadow of a massive historical catastrophe, and it wrestles with a question that honestly feels more relevant than ever. So let me just ask you, what do you think is the single biggest threat a nation can face? I mean, really think about it. For most of us, the first thing that comes to mind is probably some kind of external danger. A powerful army knocking on the door, a rival empire just waiting to pounce. It's the classic story, right? But the text we're digging into today says that answer is not just wrong, it's dangerously wrong. It suggests that the real, true existential threat, the one that can bring even the mightiest nation crumbling down, it isn't an outside force at all. It's an internal disease. It's a sickness of disunity. And to really get how this happens, we have to look at the anatomy of the nation itself. So our source for this is an early 20th century rabbinic text, and it takes a fresh look at the destruction of ancient Jerusalem. And it comes to this startling conclusion. It argues the real killer wasn't the Roman army. It was a self-inflicted wound. To explain this, the author gives us this really powerful metaphor from the Book of Lamentations. He says, imagine the nation is a body, okay? The flesh is the people, you and me, the general population. The skin is the leadership, the government, the courts. Their job is to protect the body. And the bones are the foundation, the core principles, the great thinkers that hold everything up. But here's where the diagnosis gets really fascinating. You think the sickness would start from the outside, or maybe with corrupt leaders at the top, right? No, the text argues the plague began in the flesh, with regular people turning on each other. And once the people were divided, the leadership, the skin, it just couldn't protect them anymore. And without that protection, without that unity, the bones, the very foundation of the nation, just shattered from the inside out. So if disunity is the ultimate national sickness, just how serious are we talking? Well, the text makes a claim that, especially for a religious work, is just absolutely shocking, and it uses this stark historical contrast to prove its point. Check this out. The author puts two historical moments side by side. First, you've got the generation of King Ahab. By every religious standard, these guys were a mess. We're talking rampant idolatry. But they were united. And what happened? They won their battles. On the other side, you have King Saul's generation. These people were righteous, devout. They did everything by the book. But they were divided, full of infighting. The result? They were totally defeated. The takeaway here is absolutely staggering. The author is saying that unity is so powerful, a united nation of sinners is actually stronger than a divided nation of saints. And that leads to this incredible conclusion. Disunity isn't just a political misstep. It is the one unforgivable national sin. Okay, so if the sickness is that profound, the cure has to be just as profound, right? But the solution the text offers isn't about getting everyone to agree or think the same way. It's actually something much, much more radical. The author points us to the story of Esther. When the Jewish people were facing total annihilation, the command wasn't go gather all the good Jews. No, it was go gather all the Jews, from the most devout scholars to the ones who had totally assimilated. Because the threat was to everyone, the solution had to include everyone. The cure for division, it turns out, is radical inclusion. To really drive this home, the text uses this great analogy of a murky spring. Think about it. When a spring of water is calm and still, all the dirt and sediment settles to the bottom, and the water becomes crystal clear. But when it's constantly churning and fighting with itself, all that mud gets stirred up and everything becomes murky. National infighting, the text says, does the exact same thing. It prevents clarity and lets the worst parts of a society rise to the very top. And this all boils down to a really deep philosophical question, one that gets right to the heart of the matter. When you're in a conflict and every side is convinced that they have the truth, what do you prioritize? Peace or truth? The text offers this just beautiful theological answer. It explains that in Jewish tradition, peace, shalom, is considered one of God's actual names. It's part of God's very essence. Truth, emet, on the other hand, is described as God's seal, like the imprint God leaves on the world, like a signature on a letter. So what's closer to a person? Their name or their signature? Their name, of course. The implication here is massive. If peace is God's essence, it has to be treated as more fundamental, more primary than even truth itself. Now, you have to understand this wasn't just some abstract philosophical game for the author.
He was writing this right after the Holocaust, speaking directly to a generation of survivors. He truly believed these ancient ideas contained a practical life-or-death blueprint for their future.
And you can just feel the weight of that experience in his words. He calls his generation the survivors of the sword, and he says with total certainty that the old path, the path of infighting and division, only ever led to destruction. They'd seen it firsthand. Finding a new way wasn't an option, it was a necessity. He makes this point with a simple but powerful parable. Imagine two men, lost in the desert for years. They finally stumble upon each other, and one says to the other, "My friend, I can't show you the right way out of here, but I can definitely show you the wrong way. The path I've been on has been a complete failure. So let's abandon our separate failed paths and find a new one, together." The first step, he's saying, isn't about knowing the right answer. It's about admitting that your own way isn't working. So what does this new path actually look like in practice? He gives us this really practical model, using the analogy of a factory. The big national project, for his generation, it was rebuilding the land of Israel. That's like the factory's outer wall. It's the one common goal everyone can agree to build together. But inside that wall, all the different factions can operate like different departments in the factory, each with its own style, its own beliefs, contributing to the larger project in its own unique way. It's a blueprint for unity in action, not unity in thought. And it all leads up to this final, impassioned plea, a call to just stop, to abandon the old failed ways of the past, and to consciously, intentionally begin a new life, a life built on accord and a shared sense of purpose. And that, of course, leaves us with a question for our own time. The author saw a very clear, tangible outer wall that his generation needed to build together. So for us, living in our own divided societies, what is that one common project? What's the one wall that we could all agree to build together? That's definitely something worth thinking about. Thanks for tuning in.